This is the Pharmaverse podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pietrack, engaging leaders from the pharma universe. Hello and welcome to the Pharmaverse podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pietrack. And if you're a leader or an aspiring leader in the pharmaceutical industry, you're in the right place. And to say that I'm excited about today's guest would be a major understatement. Needs no introduction. The co-founder of Cost Plus Drug Company, Mark Cuban. Welcome to the Pharmaverse.
Thanks for having me on, Michael.
You bet. And I got to start off by telling you that our search firm, K. Bassman International, they're based in Plano, Texas. And so many of the people there are like MFFLers.
Yep. Mavs fans for life.
That's it. Yeah. So they just wanted me to say thank you. And, thank you for all the Mav memories over the years.
Cool. Yeah. This year was great. It was a hell of a run.
Yeah, it was awesome. And so when I first heard that Mark Cuban had a drug company, I thought it was like a drug manufacturer.
Yeah, not that kind of drugs. I knew you thought it was some other kind of drugs, Michael.
No, nothing like that. But tell us the premise behind Cost Plus Drug Company.
Yeah, so the way the whole thing got started is I got a cold email from a Dr. Alex Oshmayansky. It's been 4 or 5 years ago now. And he wanted to do a compounding pharmacy out of Denver that made generic drugs that were on short supply. So, drugs that people couldn't have access to, but that a compounder could make because they were generic. And so we started talking, and I was, I'd been a healthcare geek for a few years at that time. And so I was like, well, let me ask you a question. You've got this farmer bro going to jail, right? And all he did was take this drug Daraprim and jack it up 7,500% or whatever it was to some crazy price. How does that happen? Well, he explained to me he bought it, got an exclusive on the source. I'm like, that just shows you it's an inefficient market. Let me do some quick digging and see if I can figure out why it's so inefficient. And it took 2 minutes to figure out that the problem was transparency. And so I told him, you're thinking too small, that we need to think a lot bigger and create a pharmacy that's completely transparent. Because when people, the process when you get a prescription, your doctor says you need this medication. The next thing they say, they don't say next, well, can you afford it? What are the economic impact? They just say, what's your pharmacy? And then they just assume that it all takes care of itself from there. And the reality is nobody knows typically what the cost of the medications they're paying or their employer or their insurance company is paying. So we decided to create costplusdrugs.com. And we did. And so it took us a while to get it all up and running. But on January 19th of 2022, we launched. And what made us different is not only did we show you the price, something others had done a little bit, but we also showed you our cost and our markup. So showing our cost, our 15% markup, what the shipping fee was because it's mail order, and what the pharmacy fill rate was for the pharmacists we partner with. It was that simple, but just the fact that we were that transparent gave us a huge edge. And because our markups were only 15% and we charged the same price to everybody, it really took off.
Yeah, and I spent a lot of time on the website looking at it. It is completely transparent, just as you said. I had a question though, like, does somebody still needs a prescription, right?
Uh-huh.
How does that whole process work?
Else, right? Yeah, your doctor prescribes it, and instead of sending it to the local pharmacy, you send it. You sign up for an account on costplusdrugs.com, and it tells your doctor where to send it. He can just get into his the digital prescribing system, put a Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drugs, send it to us. We connect it to your account, and then we mail it to you.
Interesting. And the other thing I was thinking is it's a very noble thing that you're doing because, well, first of all, drug prices probably don't affect you like it does,
No.
the normal person, right? But also, if you were all about the money, developing a new drug and then doing a huge markup and trying to hit a home run that way would be the way to go. You'd almost be part of the problem. What was your personal motive for doing this?
I mean, nobody likes the healthcare industry. Nobody. And when you talk to anybody about it, they don't trust it. They think that they're getting ripped off no matter what they're doing. And so we wanted a destination that people could trust. And my motivation was I wanted to F up the pharmacy industry. I mean, here they had been doing it the same way for so long and basically stealing from people, stealing from manufacturers and patients and doctors and hospitals, etc. And I was like, look, if what's missing is transparency, this industry might be pretty easy to disrupt. And so we went for it. And it literally, I've been involved in a lot of disruptive technologies. This has been the easiest industry to disrupt by far.
Yeah, I mean, even people that don't know what is going on behind the scenes, they still know it's broken.
Yeah.
They may not know how.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to the hospital, you're terrified of that bill. You can have great insurance and you could hit your deductible, but you don't know what your rates are going to do next year. You could be an employer that self-insures and you just don't know what the total costs are going to be, and on the pharmacy side and on the medical side. And the deeper you dig in, the worse it gets. It's not like, oh, it was an innocent mistake. It's like, no, every experience you ever read about or hear about or experience yourself is all brutally awful. And so, it's ripe for disruption, and we think we're going to really be able to do a lot of good.
Yeah, and this is disruptive, and I got to think along the way, you're not making a ton of friends with PBMs nowadays.
We don't care.
Let me ask you this. In the drug pricing world, there's so many codes and acronyms and all this stuff. For a guy that, is in a lot of different businesses, not necessarily pharma, I got to think that was a steep learning curve.
Yeah, I mean, I had to do a lot of reading, WAC, NADAC, you name it. There's more acronyms than there are in basketball analytics, right? I mean, right. There's just so many stupid acronyms to fool and confuse people. But they're not, once you start getting into it and understanding it, it's not that hard. There's just a lot of them.
So now that you've had a chance, you have sort of this visionary mind, even starting back when, your first entrepreneurial days in the 80s and 90s, fast forward 20 years. Do you see the process changing drastically? How are drugs going to be bought and manufactured in the future?
Yeah. So, the big 3, 4, 5 PBMs control 90% of the market. And their whole business is based off of lack of transparency. They put very specifically in their contracts, you can't tell anybody else what's in this contract. It's like the number one rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. The number one rule of PBMs is you don't talk about PBM contracts. And we're just going to upset that apple cart, and we have. Like, you might have seen the FTC report that came out. It used all of our pricing to compare pricing. Had we not released our price list to the public, literally just as one document, so you didn't have to look at each drug, we might not have seen these things. You're seeing reports in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. Harvard and Vanderbilt have done research showing how much CMS would save if they bought directly from costplusdrugs.com. And so, because we released our price list, that whole process has started. So when you ask how big an impact can we have, well, now the CEOs of companies who self-insure, which is close over 140 million people that they cover, they're starting to realize that this needs to be a core competency of theirs, that their healthcare expenses are the second largest line item after payroll expense. And they need to start understanding how they're getting taken advantage of. So I'm going to meeting with CEOs of major organizations, major companies, and showing them, hey, you need to audit your PBM contract, because not only are they not giving you the full rebate, but they're nickel and diming you to death on all these expenses. And not only that, but you don't even own your own claims data, right? You can't even just ask for a report for all your claims data. And not only that, you could be a major corporation. Let's just say you're a bank with branches in thousands of cities, and all your branch employees work with a local independent pharmacy. That's the only pharmacy in that town. Well, because of the deal you cut with a big PBM, they're probably paying that little independent pharmacist struggling to survive less than their cost for a brand drug. And so, they're buying at WAC -7, they're reimbursing at WAC -12, not paying them anything for a fill fee for their time and effort that they put into it. And they're going out of business left and right. And I'm going to the CEOs and I'm telling them, look, you're putting that poor little pharmacy that's right next to your branch that's been there for 30 years and all your employees grew up using, you, Mr. CEO or Ms. CEO, are putting them out of business yourself, because you signed a contract saying it was okay for the PBM to pay less than the pharmacy's cost. That's just wrong. And not only that, those rebates you think you're getting, they're not paid for by the manufacturer. They're paid for by your sickest employees, because the more you're getting in rebates, the higher your deductible. The more you're getting in rebates, the more they're going to jack up the quote unquote retail price of the drug so that they can get bigger rebates from the manufacturer, which in turn means the co-insurance and often the co-pays are higher for the patients. And not only that, when you have not only your sickest employees, but some of your older employees that have ongoing, that have monthly meds, maintenance meds that they take, well, they're paying more for those because you got a bigger rebate check. You want to wait for the day where you're on the front page of the Wall Street Journal and your local newspaper and then every TV station around you because somebody that works for you couldn't afford their deductible because you got a bigger rebate for your balance sheet? Do you really want to be there when they write the article about that local pharmacy that just went out of business, and you realize that in the article it says it's because the deal you cut with the PBM didn't even reimburse that pharmacy to their costs? The CEOs don't understand that yet. My job is to make them understand it.
Man, I can tell you're very passionate about this. And again, that kind of goes back to the motive question. You see something broken, you're going to fix it, and that's
Sure.
That's commendable.
That's my nature. Yeah, I'm always looking, okay, here's the way it is, here's the way it could be. Can I make any money at it, or can I have an impact?
And that's the heart of an entrepreneur, seeing the problem and fixing it. And creating a solution. This episode is brought to you by K. Bassman International, the leader in pharma and biotech recruiting. When pharma executives need to make critical hires, they go to the experts at K. Bassman, pharma's one-source staffing solution. Visit kbic.com. Now back to the episode. Just a quick question on costplusdrugs.com. Is it only generic drugs? Are there branded drugs there?
We don't have. It's mostly generics. We've got like 2,500 generics and, maybe a couple dozen branded medications, but we're working on them. And what's held us back, honestly, is we'll go to talk to the major manufacturers, the branded manufacturers, and they tell us point blank, the big three PBMs tell them that if they deal with us, the terms of their contracts are going to change. They may not get the formulary positioning that they previously had. And that's hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars for some of them. And so we understand, and so we're trying to figure out workarounds, and we think we have something that should be coming out hopefully in a not too distant future.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. One of my questions is what's on the horizon for Cost Plus Drugs, whatever you're willing to tell us. Like, for instance, one of the questions is right now it's a mail order pharmacy. Is it always going to be?
Yeah, well, we have a network of affiliates, right? We have, I think, 6,500 local and independent pharmacies and regional pharmacies like Kroger's, Albertsons, et cetera, that you can get a prescription on Cost Plus Drugs soon. And right now you have to go to a website called Team Cuban Card. We're going to be merging them by the end of the year. But on teamcubancard.com, you sign up the same way. Your doctor sends the prescription to the local Kroger's, and you get Cost Plus Drugs pricing.
There's so much buzz about Cost Plus Drugs right now. And I went onto LinkedIn just to see how many people work there. And I didn't see any marketing people. Is there no marketing team?
No, we don't spend a nickel on marketing or sales or promotion, not a penny. It's all word of mouth and my big mouth. And and if you think about it, if you were paying $2,000 for a chemo drug like imatinib and we cut your cost to $31, what happens next? You tell your doctor, you tell everybody else in that Facebook support group or other online support groups you're in. Your doctor tells other doctors, and word of mouth, it gets out there really quickly. Or if you're, my buddies my age, you get generic Cialis Tadalafil, and it's, $9 for 90 of them. It's cheaper than M&Ms. My buddies, could keep us in business in and of themselves.
I saw one interview with you that in the green room, one of your friends was paying $3,000 a month. And you found out that they are only paying now they're only going to have to pay $64 for 3 months. I remember that?
That was Landon. So a buddy of mine, actually a mutual friend of ours, called, and then we got to talking, and turns out the drug was droxidopa, and I was like, we didn't carry it at the time. I'm like, Landon, let me check. So looked it up, got it to him, and when we got together, it was $64 or whatever, and it's lower now because we've got more volumes to reduce the price, and we just pass it on. But it went from $3,000, $30,000 every 3 months, to down to $64 and now lower.
Wow, that's incredible. That's anybody listening is going to be
stories like that all the time, right? We get letters and emails saying, "Thank you, my dad, me, whoever's alive now. We can afford our medications. We don't have to ration our medications. We don't have to ration health daycare or food or rent. I mean, it's so rewarding to get those types of communications from people, because we know we're making a difference in lives. I mean, I literally have had people just walk up to me and hug me crying when they saw me, because we saved, in their terms, saved their life, because we cut their cost by $800 or $1,000 a month.
It's like I said, it's a noble thing that you're doing. We wish you all the success in the world in doing it. I wanted to shift gears, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
The Pharmaverse podcast is a leadership podcast. And I'm dying to know what qualities you think separate good leaders from average or just sort of not very good leaders. What qualities?
Caring, right? Caring. Because one of the hardest things to do is to align the goal and the mission of the organization with all of your employees. A true leader doesn't have to force somebody to do something, right? Doesn't have to coerce somebody to do something. You figure out a way to align your mission so that they're excited to do it for you, right? They're excited to be part of a culture that, like in the case of Cost Plus Drugs, is helping people. You can sell widgets though, and whatever that widget does for the industry you sell widgets into, if everybody's aligned on being the best at it, you're gonna be a good leader. If it's no, we just got to hit the numbers, cut the cost, it's only about the cheapest price. That's tough to lead in, and you're going to have a lot of turnover more often than not.
It's funny that you say that. When I did go onto LinkedIn and I was looking at the employees at Cost Plus Drugs, like they're all mega passionate. They are super aligned with the mission, and they're outward about it. That's got to be an easy team to lead.
Yeah, I mean, and Alex gets more of the day-to-day credit than I do, but when everybody feels the fact and hears, in their out of work life, that the stories about people whose lives we've saved and whose lives we made, it's really easy for us, right? But in organizations where, you might not have a life-saving product, or it might not be, it could be a seal, it could be paper cups, it could be whatever. But the fact that, hey, you're selling those paper cups and you're doing a good job, and you make your customers' lives easier. You make it more productive, more profitable, then the person who's on the other side of the transaction is grateful, because instead of worrying about problems and issues and where my cup's at, why does this cup have this problem, why are they smushed, whatever it may be, you're making that person's lives easier, and they're going to appreciate that from you, and that aligns everybody, and that leads to having a strong culture for the organization.
Yeah, speaking of culture, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is about team dynamics. Because when you think about all of the companies that you've had your hands in, being with the Mavs for over 20 years, what are some of the steps that a leader can take in building a winning culture? Because it's usually not an overnight thing.
Right. You mean, you lead by example. When I got to the Mavs, back in 2000 and nobody went to the games, I was like, look, our games are cheaper than going to McDonald's. They're cheaper than going to a movies. We just got to make the games fun. So the first thing was understanding what business we were in. Everybody thought, including the NBA, that we were in the business of basketball. We're not in the business of basketball. We're in the business of creating memories. We're in the experience business, because when you go to a game, no matter what the sport, you don't remember the home runs, the touchdowns, the dunks, even the game-winning shots. You remember who you were with. You remember why you were there. It was the first time you went with your dad or your mom, your aunt, your uncle, your buddy who got drunk and threw up on the person in front of him, your first date, whatever it is, that's what you remember. And so once I got people understanding what we were selling and modifying the on-court experience or the in-arena experience, then taking that phone book and putting it right in the center of all the other employees. I didn't have a desk, I didn't have an office that's, okay, here's the new owner's office. I had a desk by all the salespeople, and they got to listen to me talk about what a fun experience it'd be to come to the Mavs games. We have tickets that start at $8 back then. Come and bring your family. It's $16. You buy a couple sodas, and it's less than going to a movie. Why don't you come try it out, Michael? And when you look at it that way and you show people that you're willing to do the work and that you're communicating the value proposition and that sales are important to you, everybody understands that. And when you start telling them that, your customers are everything. If they're not happy, I'm not happy. Then your employees understand that, and that starts developing the culture. Okay, we're customer-centric. We're sales-centric. We're support centric. All the things that we need to do to reduce the stress of all of our stakeholders.
I love that, leading from the front. I've heard stories, especially from my friends that have grown up in Dallas, that you'd actually not only have a desk there, but you're making calls to customers. Hey, I invite you to the Mavs game.
Yeah, if the CEO or the founder or the owner, whatever, isn't the most excited about selling, they're in the wrong business. I mean, I love basketball, love the Mavs games. We've been voted the best, in-game experience many years. And if I can't get excited to sell that, how can I expect anybody else to get excited?
Watching Shark Tank all those years, I know that you love those experience businesses. And really, when you frame out the NBA, it's no different. It's an experience, and you're right.
Because you want to get out of the house, right? We live our daily lives, and when you go to a game, you feel the energy. When you walk into a big game, no matter what the sport is, and you walk into the arena and you just feel it, right? You know what I'm talking about, where you just, all that energy is right there, and the crowd's chanting. I mean, where else do you pay money to go and sit and scream and yell at the top of your lungs? Then that's a good thing. There's no other experience you can get where it's like, let's go Mavs, let's go. And there's that moment in a close game, the last shot, the ball's in the air and everybody's holding their collective breath. And if it goes to the hoop, you're hugging somebody you've never seen before in your life. You're high-fiving and chanting, walking out of the arena. And if you miss and you lose, everybody's moping and sad together, right?
Yeah.
Just that communal experience. Outside of sports, you cannot find it anywhere. And so you've got to understand what your product is. You've got to understand how to sell it. You've got to make sure that everybody's excited about it. And it's not just the people selling. There's a lot of people that do the work to make all those things happen. Not just the players on the court, but the people making the videos we show, the people cleaning up the mess after the game, the people setting it all up. Everybody's part of that, and you have to appreciate them all.
And I wanted to ask you about your proudest leadership moment. I can't help but notice that big trophy behind you. Yeah. But with all the companies you've sold and everything, is that the proudest moment?
Other than family, I would say winning the championship was probably up there, but I think cost plus drugs now. I mean, when your sports, like when the Mavs went to the finals this year and it was unexpected, the whole city's on fire, right? Yeah. Everybody's fired up. Whatever city you're in, when your sports teams are really going hard and have the chance to win a championship, that's what the town talks about, right? That's what everybody gets excited about. And so that's really special to be part of, but it's not nearly as special as cost plus drugs, where you realize that we literally can change the healthcare industry so that more people, if not all people eventually, can afford their medications. That's special.
That's probably a good ending point to this discussion. But I just want to sincerely thank you for taking the time, sharing your insights, and we wish you nothing but the best with Cost Plus Drugs.
I appreciate it. Everybody out there, go to costplusdrugs.com before you fill any more prescriptions, and we're going to do our best to help you. Thanks, Michael. I really enjoyed it. It was great.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us on the Pharmaverse podcast. Make sure you subscribe below so you don't miss any leadership insights. Like and comment. I would love to hear from you. We'll see you on the next episode of Pharmaverse.